All right, well, this is week 5. We are going to meet 6 times all together. So we just have one more meeting after tonight. 2 weeks from tonight will be our very last meeting together, and then we are going to take a break for the summer. And so just so you can have that in mind as you're planning your next weeks out. But I wanted to mention something because my hope for this is that this isn't just an event that you come to a couple times a year, but really that this is a community that you're part of. And I really wanted there to be a way for us to kind of keep in touch, keep connected throughout the summer. So I had an idea to do like a book club over the summer. I read this book at the beginning of the year. It's called Consider the Lilies, and it's all about anxiety, and the tagline is like finding perfect peace in the character of God. And so it talks a lot about worry and anxiety and how to find peace in God, and it really helped me. I actually am really looking forward to reading it again, but I just was wondering if anyone wanted to join me this summer, so I had this idea to do kind of like a summer book club. So I'm just kind of like going to gauge what you guys are feeling. After our meeting tonight, I'll put something in the app. And if you're interested, if you think like, yeah, I would want to do that. And also like we wouldn't be physically meeting, kind of like we do the online Bible discussion. It would be like an online book study where we're reading the chapters and then we would get on the app together and discuss it. So I'll put that in the discussion later. And if you're not part of the group on the app, you can join it, or you can tell me otherwise that you'd be interested in that. But I thought it'd be a cool way for us to stay connected through the summer. So if you're like, yes, I know, I want to do that, that sounds good. I mean, you can buy the book, you can get ready, but I'll talk about it more on our next meeting. But in case you miss the next meeting, I wanted to make sure you know what's going on. And I definitely encourage you to join the group on our app, because we basically have this like discussion that we're all part of. So I'll be posting information in there. So definitely join that. But yes, one more session after tonight, 2 weeks from now. And as you guys know, I know almost all of us have been here every single week. So I know I've said this 5 times now. But this semester we're talking about femininity, what it means. And the word femininity, it just means qualities or attributes that are characteristics specifically of women. And we've talked about how as Christian women, we might have to deconstruct a little bit of what we think about femininity, because a lot of it hasn't come from God's word. It hasn't been built off of what is in the Bible. It's just been built off of what's kind of normal in culture, maybe the family you were raised in, what you were told when you were growing up. And so the goal of us coming together this semester has been to get a biblical view of femininity. And to do that, we're looking at some verses in Titus 2. And if you remember, Paul is writing his pastor friend Titus, and Titus is on the island of Crete. And he's kind of planting churches, doing ministry there. And so this is Paul writing to him in this very pagan place. Crete was did not embrace Christian values whatsoever. I think it's important that we know that, because a lot of times when we think of like cultures thousands of years ago, we think like, oh, it was probably so old-fashioned and like traditional, but that was not the case. It was probably more similar to the culture that we find ourselves in today. So they were definitely not embracing Christian values. But this is the passage that he writes to Titus, kind of giving him advice of like how to build a healthy church. What should he do? And he's talking about the women specifically. So it says this in Titus 2, 3-5. Likewise, teach the older women to be reverent in the way they live, not to be slanderers or addicted to much wine, but to teach what is good. Then they can urge the younger women to love their husbands and children, to be self-controlled and pure, to be busy at home, to be kind, and to be subject to their husbands, so that no one will malign the word of God. So these are the 7 things that Paul points out to us. This is kind of the list that he gives women. He gives men a separate list of things. And these things were countercultural to the people that Paul was writing them to. I'm sure they were very shocking to hear. And it's not much different for us today. These things are also really challenge what society tells us to be like today as women. And I think tonight, might be one of the most challenging to what our culture tells us today. It doesn't really go along so well what our society tells us as women. So last time we met, we talked about the commands to be self-controlled and pure. And if you ever miss a week too, those videos are all on our app or they're on the Acts Church YouTube if you ever do want to catch up. But this week we're moving forward, so we're going to talk about that next virtue he gives us, which is to be busy at home. That's how it says it in this translation that I'm reading. So those words, busy at home, actually come from one Greek word, and it's this, oikorgos, something like that. And the way this word is used in the Bible, these are the definitions. This is how that word is used in the Bible. It means like caring for the house, working at home, the keeper of the house, taking care of household affairs. So that's the original word. And then you have the different Bible translations where the translators put what they thought was best to encapsulate that. So these are some of the ways that the different Bible translations translated them in. So we have the NIV, which says to be busy at home. The NLT would say it to work in their homes. The ESV says working at home. And then the New King James Version says homemakers. That's how they would translate those words. Homemaker. I don't know what comes to your mind when you hear that word. Maybe an image comes to mind, or what feeling it kind of evokes. Maybe you don't like it. You know, it's like, ooh, don't like that. For me, I think when I hear the word homemaker, I just picture like a woman in 1950s America, like wearing an apron, pearls, hair done, makeup, like in heels, cooking. Like that's the picture I put in my head. And that word homemaker, we don't use it a ton in our culture currently. It's not like a common description that we use as much. Not a title most women in our culture would be proud to have. And I think that's because our culture doesn't really have a high view of homemakers currently. You know, it's not seen as something super important or valuable. Definitely not something to aspire to. I think that if you're college age and if someone were to ask you like, what are your plans? What are you going to do? And if you said, I want to be a homemaker, they would think like you need help, like you've been brainwashed, someone help this girl, she's been oppressed, you know. I don't think it would go over well if you told people that. So our current culture, it does value what women bring to the workforce, I think, a lot. And just to society as a whole, we see that women are valuable in those areas. And so the message that seems to be sent to us is that the work we do outside our homes is the important stuff. Like it's not bad to have a husband or kids or a house, but that's, you know, the small stuff in comparison to your career and your goals and what you're going to achieve outside of your home. And I think that a lot of us, even in church, have really adopted that same mindset, and culture has really affected us to see our work in the home as not very valuable. Home isn't normally seen as a worthy place to put our talent and effort and care into as women. And we're actually told that doing anything other than working in the home is more honorable. You know, whatever you do, as long as it's not at home, it's praised and it's honored. You know, it's fine if you clean houses as long as it's not your own house. And it's fine if you work under a boss and you serve a man as long as it's not your husband. That would be demeaning, like that's what we're told. And it's fine if you teach kids and take care of kids unless they're your own children. Right? That would be wasting your talent. You'd be wasting your life if you put yourself into that. That's kind of the narrative that I'm trying to show you that culture tells us, that like, it's not as important if you do it in your home, even if it's the same thing. For example, I went to college. I have my bachelor's degree in social work. And before I had kids, I worked at a therapeutic day school, and I worked as a classroom counselor then. But for the last 8 years, I haven't had a job outside of my home. I've just been taking care of my kids, obviously having 4 kids back to back and then homeschooling them now too. But I would be probably a lot more interesting and valuable by the world's standards if I were going back to work. Even though I'm doing a lot of the same things and honestly using a lot of the same skills in my house as I was outside of my house, right? de-escalating situations, behavior management, educating children, the work I do would be more honored. It would be seen as more important if I were doing it somewhere else and getting a paycheck for it, right? So this passage in Titus 2, it's pretty straightforward. As women, we should work in our homes, and the work we do in our homes, it's part of our femininity. It is something distinct about us as women. So we should work in our homes, and not only that, we should do so in a way that we can gain wisdom to pass down to younger women. This is one of those areas where the older women should pass on wisdom in these areas. And just like we've talked about with all of these virtues, this can have an impact on the world that's watching us. That just by living this out, people are going to see the gospel in the way we live. Now, this is a fact that we often ignore in culture and even in the church, that managing a household, being a godly wife, being a godly mother, are skills requiring practice, teaching, and expertise. We can learn and grow in these areas. That's the point of the passage of what Paul is saying, that older women help the younger women. We do need help. We need wisdom. We need to learn how to get better and continue growing in these areas. I think we need to expand our vision on what it means to be a homemaker. Rather than seeing Titus 2 as evidence of Paul's low view of women, perhaps we should see it as evidence of Paul's high view of the importance of the home. He's not trying to keep women away from the real work or the important work. He sees the work we do in our homes of critical importance and value. But maybe you're like me and the image you have in your head is like that 50s housewife or something worse. I don't know, it could be worse. But let's try to change that image that we have in our head. Because a homemaker is just a woman who's a homemaker, right? She makes a home. She's a homemaker. It means that she intentionally creates a home. So my goal tonight is just to change your mindset on what it means to be busy at home, to work in the home, to be a homemaker, however you want to say it, whichever translation you like the best. Because I think most of us, whether it's consciously or unconsciously, the idea of women being told to work in the home, first of all, is offensive. And it can feel demeaning. Like when you hear that, it can just rub us the wrong way. Like, oh, that's demeaning. Like it's lower work. Or, maybe you're like, well, yeah, I do it. Like I do a lot of things in my home, but maybe you do it, resentfully, right? We kind of resent the fact that we have to do it. It feels like lower work, like less important work some of the time. We don't do it joyfully or see the value of it. The work we do at home, it requires immense amounts of sacrifice, and it's done in obscurity. I think that's one of the reasons it's so hard. There's no recognition from coworkers or an organization, even society. There's no rewards, there's no raises. It's hard work, and so it's crucial that we keep that right perspective as we do it. So my goal for us tonight is that we would really understand what the Bible is saying and what it's not saying. Because I don't believe that the Bible is saying that women can't have jobs outside their home, okay? So if you were like scared I'm gonna say that, I don't think that's what the Bible says at all. Just want to clear that up before you get mad at me. So we want to view all the things on this list, just like everything else we've talked about this semester. We want to see what the whole Bible says about it, not just these 3 words that Paul says, but what does the Bible as a whole say about women working in the home? So let's start there. Other than that text in Titus 2, another place we see this idea is 1 Timothy 5. And in this passage, Paul is actually talking about the church caring for widows and how the church should support widows and the requirements. And so he's giving all these requirements, like in order for the church to support a widow, she has to be above the age of 60. She has to have been a good woman. She has to have been a good mother, all these requirements. And he says that the younger widows, they shouldn't be on the list. The church should not support younger widows. And this is the advice that he gives. He says if they are on the list, they will learn to be lazy and will spend their time gossiping from house to house, meddling in other people's business and talking about things they shouldn't. So I advise these younger widows to marry again, have children, and take care of their own homes. Then the enemy will not be able to say anything against them. So he says these younger women, if they were married, they should marry again. If you desire to be married, marry again, have kids, take care of your own home. And I've always kind of found that passage funny because he's basically saying like once you have kids and a house and a husband to take care of, like you literally won't be able to be lazy and you will literally have no time to gossip and like be in other people's business. And I just feel that. I think that's so true. I don't even have time for any of that stuff anymore. But the Bible points to the fact, like this passage is an example that if there is a household, the woman, the wife, the mother should be the one running it. Another place we see the Bible talking about a woman and her work in the home is in Proverbs 31. And you probably are familiar with this chapter. I know we've talked about it many times if you've come here. If you haven't, you can read through it. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but we know that Proverbs 31, it outlines the character of a woman of noble character. And it's just one chapter of scripture, but it's the lifetime of a woman, all the years, all the seasons of her life summed up in just one chapter. Specifically in verses 13 through 21, it outlines a lot of the work that she does in her home. And this woman was busy at home. Like that's a perfect descriptor of her. This is some of the things it says. I picked out all the action phrases in that chapter. So she helps her husband. She cares for the children. She prepares food, gets up early, stays up late, supervises servants, makes clothing. Her work extends outside of her home. It says that she's into like real estate. She inspects a field and she buys it. She brings in income. And with her earnings, it says she plants a vineyard. So she manages her household well. You can tell when you read the chapter, like this lady has got it down. She's managing all these areas. She's got the food, clothing. She's doing all of these things. But everything she does is to benefit the people inside of her house. And then not only that, it does extend to people outside because it also says that she helps the poor. And it says she opens her arms to the needy. So this woman, she's impressive, she's hardworking, she's high achieving, high earning, but it's all pointed at her home. And the point of it is to bless others. Obviously, what it looks like to keep a home changes from century to century, country to country, family to family, season to season. And in our country today, it's a lot more cut and dry. You know, you either have a job outside your home or you don't. You either work full-time or you work part-time. But in cultures in the past, it was a lot less stark of a difference. Women have always worked outside the home. You know, whether it was helping run the family business or farming or picking crops in the fields with a baby on their back, carrying water. We've always done things outside of the home that have helped to support the things inside of the home, as well as the work that we do inside our homes. So I don't think there's a need to divide ourselves into categories of you work full-time, you work part-time, you don't work at all. Because the truth is we all work inside and outside our homes to varying degrees, and it's going to fluctuate throughout our whole lives. I like the way Skip Heitzig says it. He's a pastor that I listen to. He says the barometer of what a woman can do outside the home will depend on what's going on inside of the home. I think about before I had kids, I worked a ton. Like I always had like 2 jobs at a time. I worked a lot, but obviously things changed when I had kids, and as the kids turned into more kids, so did the time that I spent outside the home change. So this changes within seasons of our life. Obviously, having small children is one of them that changes a lot of what you can do outside the home. But also like caring for an aging parent or caring for grandkids. Like there's things all throughout our life that affects what's going on inside the home, affects how much you can do outside of the home. So our work, it might change in seasons, but no matter what your job is or how many hours a week you work, you can still, and you should still be a homemaker and embrace the work that goes into your home. Marriage is a partnership, but each partner has a specific sphere of responsibility. And so the Bible is clear that men have the responsibility of providing for the home. It says that in 1 Timothy 5:8, while women have more responsibility to be the caretakers of the home. Now, it's not that we should be slaves of our homes or confined to our houses, but it's the responsibility that falls more on us with the home. That doesn't mean the husband shouldn't help out with anything around the house, but it's the responsibility that falls more on us, just like the responsibility for providing falls more on the man in a relationship. And doesn't it just make sense that this would fall more on us as women, though? Women are clearly gifted in the area of managing the household, in taking care of children, in creating warm and inviting spaces. Few men can do in a home what a woman can do. And so I think that as Christian women, we don't need to resent the call to manage our homes. We can embrace it and we can own it. It's not meaningless busy work. Working in our homes is a high calling from God. So tonight I want to focus on this idea of what it means to be a homemaker. But before we do that, I want to just focus on that idea of home. And I have 4 things I want to share with you about home that I think are important to us to consider as Christian women. And the first is that home is powerful. So we have to change the way that we think about home. We need a biblical perspective to see our homes as a high calling from God. We've all heard the sayings, there's no place like home, or home is where the heart is, right? Even our culture recognizes that there's just something special about a home. And we all know there's a big difference between a house and a home. You know, a house or apartment or a trailer, it's a building. It's made up of walls and a floor and a roof. It's the structure, right? But a home encompasses so much more than that. A home is the people inside of the house. It's the relationships inside the house. It's the values. It's the emotional state of the home. It's how it feels to be in, how it smells, how it tastes. Just the other day, my oldest son, Silas, said to me, I've noticed that every family has their own smell. I wonder what ours is like. I was like, don't we all wonder that? I have a feeling ours isn't good, but it's always weird to think about that. It was funny that he noticed that because it always is so true. Everyone has their different smell. But home is a powerful thing. Some of our greatest successes or privilege comes from the home that we grew up in. Some of our biggest wounds that we carry come as a result of the home we grew up in. So whether for good or for bad, home is a powerful thing. When you were growing up, when you were a kid, or maybe you were a teenager, was there a house that you loved to go to? Maybe it was like your grandparents' house, or maybe it was a family friend or a neighbor. Think about, why did you love going there so much? My guess is it wasn't the house. It wasn't that they had really nice furniture and that the house was so stylish on the outside. It could have been. There was one house I loved to go to because there was always a ton of food. It was the first time I had seen a deep freezer in my life. It was this magical thing with all these frozen pizzas in it, you know? So maybe, could have been that. But more likely it was because of the kind of home that it was. Maybe it was because it was filled with love. It felt safe. If you grew up in a tumultuous home, maybe there were homes that were more peaceful and stable that you liked. If you grew up in a home that everything was very serious, maybe you liked more fun and lighthearted homes. I didn't realize it then, but now looking back, a lot of the homes that I was drawn to when I was a kid and a teenager, they were homes with a mom and a dad in it. And I think I liked the stability and the security that was there because I didn't have that at my home. But home, whether we like it or not, it shapes us. The home we grew up in, it affects who we are today, for good or for bad. So as women, we have a big part in creating the home that our husbands will live in, the home that our children will be raised in, and that our family and our friends and our neighbors will visit. So this is no small task that we have to create a home. You know, you think about it, if we as women, if we just collectively say we don't want to be homemakers anymore, right? We go along with this idea with culture that, we shouldn't have to do that. It shouldn't be our responsibility. That's not right. And if we kind of accept this low view that culture gives us, that it's not important work, I think it could have devastating effects on our society. Because if we don't make the homes, who will? Who will create these intentional spaces where people can be fed and loved and where children can grow up and flourish? If we don't, no one will. And we'll just be a society of houses and not homes. The second is that home is priority. So I think what Paul is trying to say with these passages, that as women, our focus should be pointed toward our homes. I don't think it's right to say a woman's place is in the home, but I think it's more accurate to say a woman's priority should be her home. Home is not our prison, it's our priority. Home should be what we're pointed at, not what we're trying to escape from. In Matthew Henry's commentary, he said it this way: while there are times when a Christian wife and mother may have to work outside the home, it must not destroy her ministry inside the home. The wife who works simply to get luxuries may discover too late that she has lost some necessities. It may be all right to have what money can buy if you do not lose what money cannot buy. And again, I think this is less about how many hours a week you work and more on what's truly your priority. My mom worked full-time my whole life, but that was her making home a priority. She wasn't working like to build a great career or to find fulfillment outside of her children. She was working so she could literally put food on the table and buy clothing for us. So home was still her priority even when she was working full time. So this is obviously going to shift in different seasons of our lives. Some seasons we're way more free to do things outside the home and some less. But the goal is that we wouldn't resent the seasons where we're more at home, but we would see the value in them. Because it is a blessing to be able to love and serve our families, to be able to create these environments where our family can love to be at, to create like a safe, fun environment. It's such a blessing. Third is that home has potential. I love this quote by Dorothy Patterson. She says, homemaking is not a destructive drought of uselessness, but an overflowing oasis of opportunity. It is not a dreary cell to contain one's talents and skills, but a brilliant catalyst to channel creativity and energies into meaningful work. So you get to decide what kind of home you want to create. Do you want it to be full of gratitude? Do you want it to be peaceful? Do you want it to be full of joy? Do you want it beautifully decorated? Do you want it to be really cozy and comfortable? Do you want it to have lots of homemade food and desserts? Do you want to homeschool? Do you want to have a garden? Do you want chickens? I do. What traditions do you want to have? How do you want to celebrate holidays, right? You get to decide what it looks like, what it smells like, what it tastes like. And whether you're single and living alone, you're married, you have children, the opportunity is there to create a home as a woman. Even if you're college age and you say, well, I don't really have control over the space I'm in, I live with someone else, this is a great time to think about the kind of home that you want to build in the future. Here are a few more questions you can ask yourself to spark some ideas. Who can I serve? How can I use my gifts to build up those around me? How can I be excellent in the opportunities that God has placed in front of me? And these are things that we can think about no matter what season of life you're in. And I believe for all of us, our homes have potential to be places where we love and serve others. And you don't have to wait till you get a bigger house, fancier house, more furniture. You can start making the home that you want right now. So our homes have so much potential. And then the last one is that home is built. Making a home, it's intentional work. If you think back to some of those homes that you enjoyed being a part of, my guess is there was some intention behind it. There was someone, a woman behind it, who made the place feel like a home. It didn't happen on accident. I like what it says in Proverbs 14:1. A wise woman builds her home, but a foolish woman tears it down with her own hands. So we want to be women who build our homes, not tear them down. So how do we build our homes? Well, I think the first thing is you have to know what you want to build. You can't just start off putting random things together. You're not going to know what you're building. Usually you have an end goal in mind of, I want to build this, and then you take steps to get there. So what kind of home do you want to build? It's important to identify that end goal and then take steps to get there. You know, if you say, I want to build a home where God is honored, where Jesus is at the center of the home, there's some things that you can do to build that. First of all, you're going to lead the way in what that looks like. You're going to lead the way in what it looks like to make Jesus the center and to follow God and to honor God. You're probably going to do things like read your Bible. You're probably going to spend some time in prayer. You're probably going to go to church together, whoever is in your home. You're going to talk about Jesus. You're going to teach your children about Jesus. I know one thing for sure, though. It doesn't happen on accident. Just a home that loves Jesus, it doesn't just happen. It has to be intentional. You have to do the steps to get there. Maybe you want a home that ministers to other people, a home where ministry is done and people come in and they're prayed for and they're loved and they're cared for. You want a refuge for people to come to. Well, there's some things that you can do to build that. You can create a warm and welcoming home. You can have the right attitude yourself. You can have the same attitude that Jesus had, which was to serve others and find joy in that. You can cook meals for people. You can be ready. Because if you want a home that serves other people, you have to get ready. You might need a bigger table. You might need a few more plates, a few more chairs. You can intentionally do things that are going to build a home like that, but it's not going to happen on accident. Maybe you want to create a home of security and stability for your children. Then the way you can ensure that that's always there is by investing in your marriage, by making sure you have the conflict resolution down, that you don't create an environment of tension for your children to live in, making sure your marriage is healthy and that it stays healthy so that your children can have that secure and stable home to grow up in. Maybe you want a home that's full of joy, that's cheerful, that feels lighthearted to be in. Well, start with yourself. Start with you having joy, you being cheerful. Because often we are like the thermostat of the home, right? As the woman, we kind of create that environment in the home. We're all different. We all have different callings and different values. So I think all of us, we're going to have a different answer to that. What kind of home do you want to build? To each of us, something is more important. It's not all going to look the same. Good homes, they don't all look the same. And I think that's really beautiful. But the most important thing is that we have to be women who build our homes, not tear them down. We should intentionally be building something because they're not built on accident. We need a vision for our homes so that we can work on building them. So managing a household, creating a home, it's filled with mundane tasks and repetitive chores, often performed in obscurity. And it demands a huge amount of sacrifice and serving. And sometimes between changing diapers or cleaning toilets, making the grocery list every single week again, we can lose sight of the significance of this calling. You know, we look around and it can feel like everyone else is engaged in more important work than we are. But we have to remember to have a biblical perspective. Although our culture doesn't see it this way, in God's economy, homemaking is a valuable thing and it's a high and noble calling. So as Christian women, we should be marked by the way we're busy at home, the way we run our homes, the way we serve our families and friends through our homes. Again, the whole point of this passage, it's that we would show people the gospel simply by living these things out. That's what he says. When you do these things, people are just going to look at you and see that your life is different, see what a difference the gospel has made in your life. So just the way you run your household and your hospitality, the way you treat the people who enter your house can be a beautiful picture of the gospel to unbelievers. So maybe tonight you just need like a change of perspective. You might need to begin to see your home as powerful and see the potential that's there. You might also need to spend some time answering some of these questions I raised tonight. Is your home your priority? Do you see home as a worthy place to use your giftings and talent, or are you trying to escape it? If you realize that home really isn't a priority for you, maybe you need to make some adjustments. Think about the kind of home that you want to build. If you have no vision for your home, you're going to be successful. Nothing's going to happen. So you have to get a vision for it. And what can you do to get there? Maybe spend time thinking about it, but also maybe have a conversation with your husband if you never have before, identifying like, what kind of a home do we want to build? What are our values? It has to be intentional. It won't happen on accident. So I hope that you would start to see yourself as a homemaker, whether you work full-time or part-time, or you're a stay-at-home mom, or you're retired, because we're all called to make our homes, to build our homes. And my prayer for you is that we would recognize the unique gifts and talents that God has given you, and that you would see your home as a worthy place of your time and talent. That God would use our homes to be a picture of the gospel to an unbelieving world. And I pray that the way we work in our homes, the types of homes that we build, would bring glory to God and bless the people around us. So that's what we're going to be talking about tonight in the discussion. It's all centered around this idea of home. And so the first question you're going to talk about is, what homes were you drawn to throughout your life and what stands out about them? So when I talked about, growing up, were you drawn to a home? Think about it. What homes stand out to you when you think, and why? As you kind of think a little bit deeper, why did you like the house? What made it special? Then second, describe the kind of home you want to build and what can you do to create it? So what's that end goal in mind? What would you love to build one day? And then kind of work back from there. What are some things you could do to get there? And then third, what are some ways your home can bless others right now? Because I think often we think like, oh, when I get there in years, like then my home will be a blessing. But I believe that God wants your home to be a blessing right now. And we all have that opportunity. So let's go ahead and take some time to discuss. And I'm going to put all this stuff in the discussion too, if you're on the app, so you can check that out too. All right, go ahead and discuss now.